If you live in the state of Nevada, this video is specifically for you. We're discussing how to find the right home equity line of credit in the second position in the state of Nevada. I found a few banks, not that many, unfortunately. The state of Nevada is not as competitive in terms of their HELOC promo rate offers, introductory rates, and how they price their rates on the home equity line of credit. But I did find some that were attractive for your state specifically. With that being said, this is part of an entire series on how to find the right HELOC, where I go state by state. And to see the playlist, it's titled How to Find the Right Home Equity Line of Credit. You can go state by state. You can look at neighboring states of videos that I've covered so far to help you find the best HELOC for you to either accelerate your debt faster, some of your credit cards, personal loans, student loans, even the mortgage that you have itself. Using a second lien HELOC could be a very effective tool, and or someone who's looking to invest, leverage debt at low cost to create more cash flow and ultimately solve for financial freedom by leveraging debt as part of your equation. So with that being said, let's take it to the whiteboard. On the left-hand side is my framework on how I find the best HELOCs all across the United States. If you do this pregame work in advance, you're going to set yourself up to get the very best products that banks have to offer. Now, as a personal preference, and this just is true across the board, across all states, that when you work with a smaller local credit union, non-for-profit bank, or federal credit union, nationwide credit union, those banks, 9 times out of 10, often provide a better rate, a better product overall compared to some of the bigger banks like your Wells Fargo, like your Chase, like your Bank of America. Too many people are using those banks for their second position HELOCs, and you're really not maximizing the product itself and the way it can be used. So when you go with a local credit union, the only way they can compete with bigger banks is by making better products. Problem is, they don't have the marketing budget like Bank of America, Chase, or Wells Fargo does. So that's where we have to do that manual research to look in the local city, state that you live in to find these banks. So I'm doing it on a general scale, just looking at the entire state and trying to find the best banks. For any one of these series, if you live in a certain state and you found a bank that can beat what I presented on the board here in any one of my videos, feel free to comment just the name of the bank. Don't put a link because it's automatically going to flag it as spam. So put the name of the bank, please. With that being said, left-hand side, this is the framework, doesn't change. As of right now in 2026, in August, prime interest rate is at 6.75%. That's how I base my research on the right HELOC. What is the right HELOC? The right HELOC is going to be an interest rate that's closer to prime or even below prime. And if I can get an introductory rate, these are attractive, promos and rates that you can consolidate a lot of debt, especially those of you who acquired high rate mortgages in the last couple years. You're not part of that party that locked in a 2, 3, 4% mortgage. You're part of the camp who has a 6, 7, 8% mortgage. You're part of the camp who has a 8, 9, 10% car loan. You're part of the camp who has 29, 30% credit cards. You're part of the camp who has student loans at 6, 7, 8%. You're not part of the camp that has 2, 3, 4% loans with cars, with mortgages, and even student loans at like 4 or 5%. Most people today that have been acquiring debt in the last couple of years, you're getting hammered across the board when it comes to debt. Yet rates have come down and HELOCs have made a comeback in the last couple of years, really presenting very, very attractive offers. Okay, so certain states are going to be way more attractive than others. In the state of Nevada, I wasn't finding too much attractive banks. So I got a couple here on the board: Rise Credit Union, Create Credit Union, Hercules First Federal Credit Union, Ocean Air Federal Credit Union, and New Vision. Out of the 5 here, only 2 have promos, 3.49% for 12 months and 3.99. The drawback is both of those banks are based off of a prime plus a margin. New Vision is prime plus a margin up to 2%, could be lower depending on your credit score. And then Oceanair is minimum prime plus 0.5%. Now that can be reduced with a checking account with auto pay to the HELOC, so 0.25% discount, so it might be just prime plus 0.25 and then 70% LTV. So that's actually still pretty attractive to get that early intro 3.49 really low rate. The rest are all based off prime, so 6.75%, and not a whole lot of information, but mostly are 10-year draws, 80%, maybe 90% LTV. We got some closing costs. So that's about it. And I'm going to share my screen for some honorable mentions of other banks that I found. And just so you can see what the websites look like so that you have full clarity. So Oceanair, that did make it to the board. That's the one that has the intro rate, as you can see. And then this is the breakdown of their products. So the lowest is prime plus 0.5% for 70% LTV or less. So notice how in my framework, the lower the LTV, typically the better the rate will be because it's less risk for the bank. So they're rewarding you versus if you take more risk, go upwards of 90%. Now it's prime plus 0.5, so 8.25. That's still pretty high in today's market compared to other debts. And as you can see, that little discount right there, 0.25. So it would ultimately lower that to maybe 7% in this example. Next bank I found was Greater Nevada Credit Union. They got a HELOC 6.99 intro for the first 6 months. Only reason why I didn't make it to the board is I have other banks that have 12-month intro and a lower interest rate. And let's see if it showed me what rate. Yeah. So prime plus a margin of 2%. So starting at prime plus 2 to 2.5%. Not attractive. That's why I didn't make it to the board, but still showing you what research I did. One Nevada Credit Union, prime plus 0.25. One Nevada, they do a HELOC as well. You got Silver State Schools Credit Union. You probably have to be a teacher or have a certain career to get with this bank, but they do offer HELOC. And as we can see, 10-year draw at prime. So we could actually throw that on the board. Let me see why I didn't do that. See if there's any information here. There's no draw period. I mean, there's no intro period. It says, yeah, membership required. Must be a Silver State Schools Credit Union member to borrow. All right, so there's probably some additional sort of career or something you got to get into, be a part of. But still, honorable mention. Rise, we already mentioned them, so that's what the bank looks like. Great Basin Federal Credit Union. They have a HELOC product. It says variable rate up to 16%. Wasn't able to see if that's, I highly doubt that's where they're starting the rate at. So I would imagine it's probably prime plus something. 80% LTV, no closing costs, 10-year draw. Here we go. All right, so it does say prime plus 50 basis points. Or prime plus 300. Or, in other words, 3%. Yeah. So minimum 7.25% would be the lowest. Create, just, straight prime. Good, decent bank. Noble Credit Union. HELOCs, I don't think, they didn't display their rate. So this could be an attractive bank. You would have to just call. So that's Noble Credit Union. We have Hercules, straightforward, with the Did they have an intro rate? No, just straightforward prime, HELOC, and then New Vision. 3.99 for 12 months. Let's see if we, yeah. Then it says plus a margin of up to 2%, being like 2% being the max. So it could very well be just prime plus 0.25, which would make this quite an attractive HELOC to take a look at to get the intro. All right, so those are the two best banks I found for intro rates. They New Vision and Ocean Air have the longest intro rate and the lowest rate. So lowest rate and longest period. 12 months was the longest I found in the state of Nevada for those two banks. And that concludes this video for today. Again, this is part of an entire series going state by state. And if you're looking for additional coaching and accountability one-on-one, that is something we can do offline together. You click the link below, get on my calendar, let's have a consultation, or join my email list and begin to receive value. I host free workshops, I have a ministry. So those of you that are struggling financially, you're paycheck to paycheck, you're barely breaking even, or even operating from a negative cash flow, I have an entire ministry where I help people for free, day in and day out. This channel, I do this for free, day in and day out. All I ask, hey, share with someone you know, like this video, comment, engage. Let me know how I can continue to serve you at the highest level. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and we'll be talking soon.